Hi, thank you for joining us today. Today, November 13th, marks the 6th annual Indie Author Day. All around the world, libraries and other organizations celebrate independent authors with speakers, workshops, open mics, networking, and much more. Today's speaker is Yolonda Tonette Sanders. Yolonda is an author, speaker, and founder of the company Yo Productions. Yolonda has published several novels and through Yo Productions offers publishing services such as proofreading, editing, and ghostwriting. Yolonda offers workshops aimed at equipping writers with skills necessary to improve overall writing and reach their goals. She joins us today to speak to the importance of editing, whether you go the traditional route or self-publish. And with that, I will turn it over to Yolonda. Thank you for joining us today, Yolonda. We really appreciate your presence here today.
Thank you, Carla, for having me. It's an honor. So I want to share my screen. Do I have the ability to do that? Let's see.
You should.
Okay. Okay. So the title of this presentation is called Editing, the Necessary Evil If You Want to See Your Work in Print. So again, I'm Yolonda Tonette Sanders, and this is being held virtually for the Euclid Public Library. So let's begin with this. So today, I am speaking at the Euclid Public Library to individuals about editing their works. I started writing seriously in 2002, and I was first published in 2005. Writing is the easiest part. Editing is harder. Writing is a skill that one must continually hone. It's easy to get discouraged when writing. Sometimes people get hungry and want to eat while writing. My favorite thing to eat is sweets, but my hips don't like all the chocolate. Editing takes patience. Hopefully by now you have realized some problems with this slide. If not, then we really need to talk. So one of the things that you want to make sure you do is edit, be it editing for a presentation like this, where it will be aired virtually for people to watch at their leisure, or if you're writing a paper, whatever you do writing wise, if it has words on it, you want to edit. Now, for the record, all of these mistakes are on purpose. So don't be afraid to reach out to me for any editorial services. I promise I know how to spell chocolate. I eat it a lot, so I know how to spell it. Editing is crucial. And here are some things I want to share with you about editing. First, use honest friends or family members with above average editing skills. You want to use people that are very good at writing. And you know, I know that can be subjective, but here's how you can tell. Do these individuals send you emails? Look at the grammar and spelling in their emails, even with text. So I know nowadays, you know, people text and we use all kinds of informal language. I am still a writer at heart, so there are some text messages that I send that are informal, but most of the time it takes me a while to send a text message because I'm worried about the grammar. So you want to use friends and family who, you know, got more than a B or C in English. You hire a professional. You know, I know in today's day and age, some people are struggling, you know, with their finances. So hiring a professional editor may not be in your budget, but you can look at other ways. For instance, is there a service that you can provide to someone else who can provide editing for you? You can barter with people, or you can save up your money. Anything that's important to us, we invest in. So you want to try and make sure you hire someone, if you don't have friends or family who can help you with the editing. And then we have the do it yourself is needed and necessary, but it should not be your only form of editing. The reason this is important is because when we rely on ourselves, especially when it comes to things that we have written, we tend to see what is there, what should be there versus what is actually there. Uh, Even if you use Microsoft Word or Grammarly or some other program, those programs catch a lot, but they don't catch everything. So it's important that you have eyes other than your own when it comes to editing your work. It's sort of like the saying, I'm going to get it wrong. I'm sure I won't say it verbatim, but the person who has himself for an attorney has a fool for a client, or something to that effect. So long story short, you cannot be your own editor. I've been writing professionally since 2002, with my first book released in 2005. I recently released a devotional project with 17 other contributors, and I'm the editor for it. It's published under my label. I wrote devotionals, and I also had someone edit my work because I needed that, and they caught things that I didn't see. So, top 5 reasons why editing is important, according to the book of Yolonda, which you won't find that book on Amazon, by the way, or anywhere else. It's only right here. So you'll have to tune in always to Euclid Public Library's YouTube channel in order to get this book. But the top 5 reasons: the first draft is never the best draft. Editing helps the good become great by generating new and or better ideas. So I know those of us who especially write novels, and you get to the end and you're like, I'm done. And there's that feeling, a sense of accomplishment. But that's just the beginning. Editing is necessary. The first draft is just that, the first draft. Then editing ensures proper sentence structure and flow of material. Over time, your writing will improve, resulting in potentially lower editing fees for future projects. So back to, if you have to hire an editor, especially if you get used to working with the same editor, over time, your fees may be lower because that person might charge a fee according to your skill level. So the more you improve in your writing, the more you will save on editing fees, theoretically. Editing shows agents, acquisition editors, and publishers that you care about the overall quality of your work, and decreases the risk of your story sitting on the shelf collecting dust forever. So it shows people that you care. You have to believe in your work if you want someone else to believe in your work. And then readers deserve your best. To me, there is nothing worse when it comes to publishing and editing for an author to just throw a book together and expect for people to buy it. I was at a book festival one time, and there was a pretty well-known author. I won't say the name because I'm not trying to get sued, and neither is Euclid Public Library. But the author basically, he made a comment of how he's been doing this for so long, and now I just throw it together, and I'm like, oh, it's good enough. They'll buy it anyhow. And that just burned me up because I feel that that's taking advantage of your readers. They deserve the absolute best that you can give. So this is why editing, according to the book of Yolanda, is important. So right now, if you're watching this, which obviously you are if you hear that instruction, I want you to pause for just a second and grab a paper, pen or pencil, and then come back with your creative thoughts. So I'm going to give you like 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It probably wasn't a full 10 seconds, but that's okay. You can always hit pause. So I want you to look at this paragraph. And I'll actually read it because you are going to rewrite it. So it says, I don't like to watch scary movies. Scary movies keep me up at night. I get nervous with every creaking sound I hear. I wish my friends didn't like scary movies either, but they do. And they made me come with them to see a scary movie. I wanted to see something else like a comedy. The only reason I came, I thought we all wanted to see something funny, but when we got here, they decided on a scary movie. I am not happy about this. So this paragraph is, it would be great if you could watch this with friends and each of you can take turns and share how you've rewritten this paragraph. The reason I can point out some things in this paragraph, but I'll point out some things and then you might even catch things that I don't point out. The first thing is I get tired of hearing scary movie, scary movie, scary movie. This is let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 scary movies in this paragraph. We know nothing about the author speaking, except we know that this person doesn't like scary movies, right? But we're not really drawn in. There's, it's written in the first person point of view, which that's okay. And we'll talk a little later about point of view. But I would like you to spend some time, rewrite this paragraph and see what things you can do to edit this paragraph. And when you're done with this one, we actually have another. And this brings us to paragraph 2. Hannah and Michael were on their way to their grandparents' house with their mom and dad. As usual, the siblings were sitting in the back, each on their cell phones. Hannah had an iPhone, but Michael did not. They really didn't enjoy the 2-hour ride to their grandparents' home, but they did enjoy the time they spent with Grandma and Grandpa. They would be spending the entire summer with them, which meant they would have lots and lots of fun. Now, if you're not cringing when you see all the errors in this paragraph, you should be. For starters, in this first line, we have grandparents, but the apostrophe is in the wrong place. If you look at the first line and then you go down to the fourth line, you see the difference. Now, on the fourth line, it's correct. On the first line, it isn't. We've capitalized mom and dad here, which is a problem. You might wonder, well, why is that a problem? Because they're not using those terms as names. It would be different if they said, hey, mom and dad, or mom said, dad said, or I'm writing with mom, or I'm writing with dad. When you say with their mom, this shouldn't be capitalized. That shouldn't be capitalized. iPhone. Any iPhone user should know that that right there is a glaring error. But there are many people in the world who don't have iPhones. I know there are many people who do, right? It's probably an iPhone Android battle. But a lot of people who aren't familiar with the iProducts, myself included, I don't have an iPhone. People may not necessarily know how to spell iPhone. Now, this might look correct to them, but in reality, you know, when you write iPhone, it's the I and a lowercase I, and then phone. There's no hyphen with it. And actually, if you want to be completely correct, which you will want to be completely correct if you are presenting something, it should be a capital P. So it should be a lowercase I and a capital P. Yeah. there are so many things wrong with this paragraph. So when you rewrite this, hopefully you will take the time to do it. Not only would I like you to fix these errors that I pointed out, but think of ways that you can make this more interesting. Remember I said when you edit, your writing will improve. So one good practice is to take a paragraph, either one of the two I have given you, or you can create your own and continually rewrite those things. And we'll practice that a little more later as well. But you want to continually rewrite those things and learn how to stretch yourself. Okay, I'm sharing with you never before seen in YouTube world. The pre-published chapter opening of In Times of Trouble. So this was I think it was my fourth novel. Forgive me if I am incorrect on the number. I kind of lost track of the order, or maybe it was the third. Whatever. It's my novel. I wrote it and it was published. So I am going to read to you the difference between what was pre-published, and this wasn't even the first draft. This had gone through a little bit of editing, but I want you to be able to see the difference that I've made after it went through editing. So let me read this to you. Okay. It says, with a green hand towel spread underneath her hands, Lisa sat at the oval-shaped glass dinette table polishing her nails. Tucked away in the Sharonville suburb of Cincinnati, the Hampton household was unusually quiet for a Saturday evening. Chanel, Lisa's 17-year-old daughter, had just left the house about 20 minutes ago around 8 to go see a movie with one of her friends. Besides the emptying of the automatic ice maker, the only other noise Lisa heard came from her mother. Wire frame glasses rested at the tip of Hattie's nose as she sat across from Lisa, flipping through the pages of the Cincinnati Enquirer. This had been a lazy day all the way around for Lisa. After showering, she got dressed in a blue pajamas pant set, accessorizing it with her gold charm necklace that she just had to wear every day no matter what. Her hair was still tightly wrapped underneath a black satin scarf, just as it was when she'd woken up this morning. Her only encounter with the outdoors was when she got the paper off the front porch. Being a house hermit was not the norm for Lisa, especially on days like this when the weather was nice and warm. But this past week had been hectic because Lisa had worked many late evenings thanks to the new time reporting system her employer, Princeton Technologies, had put into place. Are you asleep yet? Boy, I got tired even writing it. This was the, I don't know if it was the first draft, but it was a very early draft of my novel. These would have been the first 2 paragraphs of a book. And I don't know about you, but when it comes to reading, I've gotten older and my time is way more valuable. If a book does not draw me in, I'm done. I used to be the type who, if I start reading a book, I would finish it, no matter how horrible it was, no matter how much I struggled through it. I would finish reading that book because I felt you have to finish what you start. Well, I still believe that you have to finish what you start, but when it comes to reading material that takes up my time that I'm doing for leisure, I will put it down. I don't care how much I paid for it. I don't care if it's autographed. I will put it down and it will likely get donated somewhere because to me, time is valuable. This, I wrote it and I'm telling you that I found this boring. But of course, when that first draft was done, it's like, I'm patting myself on the back, right? Because I finished this novel that I have been working on for so long. This will put me to sleep. And I'm glad that I didn't send this in to my editor. So after many, many edits, this is what was actually published. It took Lisa a few minutes to fully regain consciousness when she woke up and found herself in the living room. She hadn't meant to fall asleep. Tucked away in the eastern suburb of Columbus, the Hampton household had been relatively quiet last night. With her mother and daughter out, Lisa took advantage of the solitary Saturday evening and just relaxed. Considering the many late nights she'd worked the previous week, she needed the break. Lisa spent the evening in her blue satin pajamas, curled up on her cream plush sofa where she had apparently fallen asleep. The sound of the snow humming on her flat television screen was irritating, and she quickly used the remote to turn it off. Noticing the time was 12:49 a.m., Lisa leapt up and ran through the kitchen to see if her car was in the garage. Nope, just her mother's car, which meant that Chanel, her 17-year-old daughter, had missed her midnight curfew. Well, other than the fact that Lisa has now moved from Cincinnati to Columbus, that was one of the changes. This version takes the reader much more into action. Let me see if I can go back. Okay, so let's go back to this version. And we're still, All we know is where she works. Her daughter had just left the house, so we don't even know what, the climax of that night. But when you fast forward within 2 paragraphs, you understand that this mother is now panicked because her daughter has missed curfew. And it brings the reader into the story more. This first version is just all fluff. Information that may or may not be important that you will find out later on, if there is more context needed to the story. But it was boring. It was boring. Now, the key when editing, even though this was the final version, the key is that I still have this version. Why do I have this version? Well, one, I needed it for this presentation. No, because I don't throw anything away. I just constantly save as a new file. So that way, if I need to go back and pull out a detail later, I still have it there. So make sure when you're editing, you save as versus save over by just hitting save. You might want to put version numbers and dates on your files. I tend to do that a lot. I will put the date so I will know this is the most recent version. Other differences between, who wants to sit and watch a character polish her nails in the first scene of a book? You don't even know Lisa. You don't even know if you like her at this point. You might be invested in her nails later on as the story goes, but who cares? The part about this necklace, that's a detail that will come into play in the story later on, but it wasn't important enough to put it in the opening because the reader doesn't care about this character right now. The reader is trying to decide if he or she wants to even spend time with Lisa. You remember what I told you about me and my time? I assume that other people value their time the same way, just like you're valuing your time while you're watching this video. So there are some things in there that just didn't fit. But now, that it took her a few minutes to fully regain consciousness when she woke up. I think a lot of people can identify with that. You ever fall asleep on your couch and wake up in the middle of the night and look around like, okay, where am I? Or maybe you stayed at a hotel or friends and you wake up in the middle of the night and you have that little sense of disorientation. That is something that I felt readers could identify with. And my publisher and my agent apparently agreed because this was the published version. So enough about Lisa and her 17-year-old daughter who missed the curfew and who is in big trouble, by the way. So if you want to know what happened to Chanel, or where she was, then you will have to pick up In Times of Trouble. Shameless plug there, right? Editing tips and suggestions. So again, editing the necessary evil if you want to see your work in print. Some people don't. So if you care nothing about sharing your work with other people, getting it published, finding an agent, if you don't care about any of those things, then this presentation isn't for you. But if you're someone, which I'm assuming you're someone who really cares about the quality of your work because you're watching this portion of the video, then please take heed to the following tips and suggestions. As great as your writing skills may be, you can't be your only editor. So that whole fool for a client quote that I've messed up, I know I've butchered it, but it's out there somewhere. Just look it up. Use a professional editor, or again, at least someone who has above average literacy skills. So that is so important. And here's another tip. This isn't even on the slide. I just remembered. Here's another tip. You can use a variety of people with skill levels. So, you don't want that person who got the C in English to be your only editor, but that person may be able to provide something that, the master's degree in communication and English friend you have can't provide. They can provide a perspective. They can tell you whether or not your story flows, whether or not it interests them. So you can learn something from everyone. Just make sure that when it comes to people who can provide you technical feedback, that they have some skills. Avoid overusing words that stand out. A dictionary or thesaurus is your best friend. So in the one example where scary movie was repeated, that stood out. You want to find other ways to say things so that your story does not have a monotone to it, so it's not repetitive, especially with creative writing. Now I know scholarly writing tends to be a little on the boring side and more repetitive, but when it comes to creative writing, you want to make sure that you have variation. What's the saying? Variety is the spice of life, something to that effect. So I mess up, I butcher quotes, song lyrics. I'm notorious for not getting lyrics correct. So somewhere around there, it's something. Variety is the spice of life. I actually think I'm pretty accurate on that one, but we'll see. Someone Google it. Never take shortcuts with editing. Give it your all. And this is repetitive of what I said before. Your readers deserve your best. The thing about it is, no matter what you publish, someone somewhere won't like it. So it's not that you're trying to please everyone with what you produce. There will be somebody who has something to say negative about your work. Here's how I handle any negative feedback. Is I can rest peacefully at night because I know that at the end of the day, I gave my absolute best. And if my best wasn't good enough for someone, so be it. I know I gave it my all. Versus if someone was negative, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, you did kind of try to skirt around this, or you didn't do your research like you should have. And nothing is ever going to be perfect. So understand that perfection is not the goal here. It's just making sure that you do everything possible. Everything possible. Again, to give your readers the best, to give yourself the best. You're worth it. Not only do your readers deserve it, but you're worth it as well. I want to talk just a little bit about point of view and perspective, because this is important when editing. And I have a disclaimer, because again, I'm not trying to get sued, and neither is Euclid Public Library. So this exercise I did not create, okay? I got this exercise from Quizlet.com, and Emerald Team BRMS, the one who created these questions. So I am not the author of any of the passages, okay? So the goal here is to match the passages with the correct point of view. So we have 5 passages and 5 perspectives. So I made the point of view and perspectives. I made each of them a different color because I thought it might be easier on the eyes to distinguish between them. But A is third person limited point of view. B is first person point of view. C is third person omniscient point of view. D is second person point of view. And then E is third person objective point of view. So, number 1, we lived on the main residential street in town. Atticus, Gemini, plus Calpurnia, our cook. Gemini found our father satisfactory. He played with us, read to us, and treated us with courteous detachment. So, if any of you recognize this story, I can't tell you where all the little excerpts are from, but this story is from To Kill a Mockingbird. And the answer is, for this, is B. It's written in the first person point of view. And you know that because you see the we, the I's. It's the character is actually telling the story. That's first person point of view. Number 2, once you have your grill assembled, the next thing to decide is where to put it. A grill puts out a lot of heat, so you should position it several feet away from the side of the house or any plant or shrubbery. You'll have an easier time with a spot that is sheltered from the wind. When positioning a grill on a wooden deck, remember that sparks and live embers can fall from a charcoal grill. So this is a second person. So number 2, the answer is D. The reason this is second person because it's you. So when you're writing a novel, you normally won't find second person. It's either the third person or the first person. Second person tends to be prevalent in instructional manuals, as this excerpt right here was taken from an instructional manual. I need to put a pin before we go on, because I've made an assumption as I started to go through this. I've made an assumption that everyone knows the difference between point of view and perspective. And so really quick, just in case there's someone who's like, hey, I don't even know what the difference between these two are. And you're going to Google, you don't have to do that, because I'm going to tell you that the difference is perspective has to do with the thoughts, feelings, and actions of a character. So that's a very simple way of putting it. It's a character's worldview, their background, their experiences, where point of view is if it's in the first, second, or third person. So that's it. Number 3, Henry was bending over and adding ice to the bubbling pot of beans when he was startled by the sound of a sharp, snarling cry of pain from the dogs. So we've already used B, which is first person, and we've already used D, which is second person. So number 3, we know it's one of the third persons, right? But we don't know if it's limited, omniscient, or objective. And the answer, we have a drum roll. I would do it, but I'm afraid that my drum roll won't translate very well on video, that it will just sound like a bunch of noise. So, imaginary drum roll. The answer is A, third person limited point of view. This is because it's limited because it's the thoughts of a singular character instead of omniscient or objective. So number 4, a child stood motionless on a street corner. Sunshine beat upon the cobbles, and a lazy summer wind raised yellow dust which trailed in clouds down the avenue. That one is E, third person objective. There's no kind of feeling, perspectives, or anything. It's all observing. And then finally, the last one, which by default is third person omniscient point of view. Jane and Michael sat hugging themselves and watching. It was also surprising that they could find nothing to say, but they knew, both of them, that something strange and wonderful had happened at number 17 Cherry Tree Lane. And then that's C, the third person omniscient, because we find thoughts and feelings of multiple characters. So that means that the story is being told from both characters' point of view, because Jane wouldn't know how Michael thought, and Michael wouldn't know how Jane thought. But because we see that in this little excerpt, both of their thoughts are being shared, that's omniscient point of view. So keep this in mind, especially if you're writing a novel, because you want to be consistent with what you do. Some novels you'll have the strategy where the author has written like 3 main characters, and various chapters are maybe in first person, depending on the character's point of view. Some authors totally choose the third person. There's really no right or wrong. It depends on your story and your goal. And only you can decide that. So figure out what your goal of your story is, and then how can the characters best tell that story? Do they need to tell it in a third person point of view? Do they need to tell it in first person? Only you can make that determination. Then your turn. I have one final exercise for you, and I hope you will take the time to do this because I think it's actually fun. So, using first or third person point of view, I want you to write a paragraph about an experience that you or someone you know had with an animal. So, for example, you can write about a time when someone was walking a dog, or when he or she was feeding animals at the zoo. So if I were to do this exercise with you right now, I would write about when we first got our dog. So we have a miniature pinscher. His name is Paco, P-A-C-O. Some people, when we say it, they think we're saying taco for some reason. but Paco, he's a miniature pinscher, and we got Paco in April of 2017. We got Paco approximately a month before my mother passed away, and she passed away in May of that year. And so Paco was my emotional support dog. He is spoiled rotten. Very much so. He's my husband and I were better people parents than we are Paco parents, because that's you ever hear about the couple who they've had children and the children are almost grown, and then they end up having that change of life baby, that last one, and it's just like all the rules go out the window. Yeah, that's us. He's spoiled, right? Oh my gosh. So anyhow, Paco, my experience with Paco is, Paco is, I won't tell you how spoiled he is, because, you might see this and then think that we need an intervention or something, but we probably do. I'll just tell you this little part, okay? This little part. And I only tell you this little part because we've gotten past it. So this little part is that up until maybe about a year ago, Paco only drank filtered or bottled water because his mother only drank filtered or bottled water. Now my children, they only drink filtered or bottled water. I get that there are people who only drink filtered or bottled water, but he's a dog. He can drink tap water, right? He has started drinking tap water. So my experience with Pac, I'm a lover. I love hard. My family, my friends, I'm going to give the best love that I possibly can to them. And that has happened with Paco. So we've had other dogs before. None of them have been quite like Paco. And so my experience, the reason why I think things are so different with Paco is because I got him when I was in emotional pain. And I cared for my mother prior to her passing. And so not only that, but my life was changing, just there were so many things happening, becoming an empty nester and just grieving, and so I poured all that care. I didn't have my mother to care for anymore, and so I poured that all into Paco. So that's my experience with the dog. I could go on and on, but this is not about Paco. He steals the show anywhere he goes anyhow, and now he's taking over this presentation, right? But here's the thing. After you write about your experience with an animal, I want you to then write that same story from the animal's point of view. And if I were to write this from Paco's point of view, I would say something to the effect of how I was born in December of 2016, and I had 3 siblings. And one day, my siblings, I just started noticing how they disappeared one by one. And so then, I'm thinking, yay, I have mom and dad to myself. And then these people come and they pick me up and they take me. I didn't have a name. I was shaking, I was scared. And so then if I were really going to tell this story from Paco's point of view, I would talk about how he must have felt coming, literally being ripped from his home and then coming to this new environment and taking a while. He was nearly 4 months when we got him, just a little shy of 4 months. We got him in April of 2017, and he was born in December of 2016. But I would talk about, the fear from his perspective, how he was shaking, how he struggled to get up the stairs. That's a fun exercise to do, whether it's an animal or even practice telling a story from different characters' point of views, because it will allow you then to gain insight into how your story can change depending on who's telling it. And again, when you're trying to decide point of view, or you're trying to, just figure out what to do, think of what will work best for your story. And in this situation, if I were to go on, and I intentionally stopped myself because I could go on and on, I can promise you that Paco's version of the story will be much better than how I would tell the version of the story. I imagine that, he's wondering, like, all of a sudden they give me filtered water and I know nothing about this life, or they stopped giving me filtered water and I know nothing about this life. There's a cute movie on called Doggone Trouble. As I like to tell people, watch that movie, and that's Paco's cousin. So, enough about Paco. Hopefully, you have enjoyed this presentation and you've learned something. Please feel free to share it with others. This is me, Yolonda Tonette Sanders. You can find me on my website at yoproductions.net, Twitter at YT Sanders, and then Facebook, facebook.com, Yo Productions. And then here are my novels at the bottom. This one, In Times of Trouble, that is, that's the book I read the excerpt from. This is the devotional that I told you about, that I edited this devotional, but I wrote pieces and I had someone edit my work, and then here are just other things. So thank you for your time and attention, and happy writing.
Thank you very much, Yolanda, for the information you shared. I'm not an author and I have no aspirations in that direction, but I can definitely agree that editing is very important. I read a lot, and so I notice some of these things. So very important information that you shared. Are there any other projects you're working on now?
Well, one, not many people will want to read, but it's called a dissertation.
Oh, okay. That's a big one.
That's a big one. I'm not sure how many people will actually look me up for my dissertation, but I am working on my dissertation, looking at emotional intelligence and followership, which basically deals with, the type of follower someone is, whether they're, a yes person or if they're a person who asks questions. And so that's my main focus right now, but I do have other works. I have a cozy mystery that I'm working on, and once I finish my dissertation, which I'm very, very close to the finish line, don't know necessarily how close because it has to go through a lot of editing, but I am going to be starting a podcast.
Oh,
cool. If anyone wants to learn more about that, just send an email to podcast@yoproductions.net. But yeah, that's it right now.
Well, that sounds great. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us today. And with that, I'm going to close the program and wish everyone happy writing. Bye.